For today's episode of The Road to Japan, I give an explanation of what this show is all about, what I plan to do with it, and where I'm going to go from here. And I run out of breath while doing it. I really need to get back into shape. All that and more as I traverse the road to Japan. Konnichiwa. Minasan, genki desu ka? Welcome, everyone. Today is September the 1st, 2014, and you are listening to episode 1 of The Road to Japan. My name is Nico. I'll be your host for this episode. Let's see, let's jump right in to, what this is. I mean, what are you listening to? Why are you listening to it? Well, I don't know why you're listening to it. It could be a variety of reasons. But I'll tell you why I'm doing it. Basically, where do I begin? This is going to be a show that is somewhat of an audio blog or even a journal, so to speak, of my road to getting to Japan. I've been fascinated with Japan and Japanese, the language, the culture, the people, pretty much since I was a teenager. Probably in my late teens was my first exposure to it, as probably is the case for a lot of teenagers when they get exposed to things that eventually begin to shape their lives as far as where they want to go in life, the hobbies they're going to pursue, things of that nature. So I'd probably say it was around 17 that I watched my first movie that was in Japanese. Well, actually, at the time, it was probably dubbed, but it started my interest with Japanese movies, and then over the following years, I would find ones that were actually in Japanese and subtitled and things of that nature. And that's what led to me becoming interested in the language. And after I graduated high school, I took a few classes at a local community college from in Portland, Oregon, where I'm originally from. And it was basically an introduction to like Japanese 101 type of classes. One was reading and writing, and then the other class was speaking, conversation. And I got A's in both those classes. I mean, granted, they're just the level ones. These go out to obviously intermediate, advanced, and things like that. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to continue because I was paying my own way for those classes and ended up losing the job that I had at the time, because I was a 20-something. I didn't give a crap about a career at that time. I was just being stupid and arrogant, like most teenagers are. So I ended up not having that job anymore, and shortly thereafter, I ended up having a falling out with my family, and before I knew it, I was on my own completely. Like, I had to support myself and had to actually think long term about, keeping a job and a roof over my head, things of that nature. So, over the course of, I don't know, following maybe 4 or 5 years, I, sort of stumbled my way through, just living, surviving. And along the way, I've obviously made some bad decisions, as a lot of, people in their early 20s tend to do, and definitely put myself in a bit of financial trouble. So, even though I wanted to go to school and try and pursue something, I didn't even know what yet, but I just wanted to, find myself in a classroom. I couldn't afford to do it, because I definitely couldn't afford to pay my own way, because, well, college is ridiculously expensive no matter where you go. And as far as like a loan was concerned, the mistakes that I made enabled it so I wasn't really able to get a loan. But, let's fast forward a bit here. I now am working, I basically had a career for 7 years as a CNC machinist, and have been able to work my way up to the point where I make a decent wage now. I can live comfortably, as far as my standard of living. And I can have disposable income on top of that, which is obviously really nice. But what's more important is that I was able to, repair a lot of the damage that I did early on, as far as my finances were concerned. So I was able to, kind of bring everything up to par and, prove to lenders that I was, trustworthy once again. So now I'm finally, at the age of 31, well, now I'm 32, but finally I'm able to, give this college thing another shot. So, why did I call the show The Road to Japan? Well, because, probably about 10 years ago, during my early 20s, is when I became enthralled with the idea of, living in Japan. And I didn't really know how to go about that. There's typically two easy ways to do it. And one is to, obviously, as with, getting to live in any country, is to marry a national, make them your spouse. And while, yes, you can do that, typically that's not advisable, especially if it's for, the purpose of just living in that country. I mean, obviously, marriage is, at least to me, it's a personal commitment to another person, and so on and so forth. And, that's just how I view it. So, while I did flirt with the idea, I never really actively pursued it. Obviously, I'm still a single man, at this point. So I definitely didn't go through with anything. But the other way, especially to live in Japan, is to go there to, teach English as a language. And the thing, obviously, that kept me from doing that, which, might be the case for a lot of other people as well, is the fact that in order to do that, most of the companies that, will hire, these people to come over and teach the language, is that they have to have a bachelor's degree minimum. My understanding is that you can obviously have higher than that, but they need a minimum of a bachelor's degree. So that leads to, where I am at this point, which is, working towards that bachelor's degree. Now, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. And what I mean by that is that I don't necessarily have a direct path, as far as how to get to where I'm going. All I can tell you is that my end goal is to live and work in Japan, primarily, to, teach English as a language. Because as I was getting into this whole, honestly, 10 years ago when I thought about, living in Japan, and just realized that it wasn't going to happen for me, because at that time, I was still having a lot of the financial troubles and everything. So I, obviously as a, very depressed person, I just kind of accepted that it wasn't going to happen. And then sort of, I don't want to say tabled it, I just kind of forgot about it. And so when it came time, well, basically what's kind of reignited everything was the fact that I grew up in Oregon, where I was born and raised. And for a long time, I wanted to move, leave the state, live somewhere else. Obviously I just wanted to keep it within the country, because that was a lot easier. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get out of Oregon. I think that happens with a lot of people, that they want to leave the place that they grew up in and just go somewhere else. Some want to go see a big city like Los Angeles or Chicago or whatever. And that wasn't necessarily the case for me. And so basically something happened along with my career where I was trying to, move up to the next level, as it were. And just the way that I was going about things, it became more and more realistic that I was going to have to move. And I mean, move out of state. Cause I mean, I was putting my resume out there with the experience and stuff for what I was looking to do. And the only responses I was getting were for companies that were out of state. So when it finally sunk in that I was going to need to move in order to do this, I started looking at places that I wanted to move to. And I figured that I have a good set of friends already in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been there a couple times to visit these friends, to go to events there and things of that nature. And, so it was a pretty easy pick. I mean, especially out of all the options that I had, Milwaukee definitely had the climate I was more into, because I usually prefer colder temperatures. I'm not one of those like snowbirds that wanted to be arid or really, just really hot all the time. I actually kind of hate that. So yeah, when it came time to figure out where to move, Milwaukee hit the top of the list, and I just kind of stuck with it. And so eventually I found a job that I thought was going to be promising and elevate my career and blah, blah, blah. And so it kind of just hit me out of nowhere. It's like, oh crap, I'm going to move. I have to move. And I had about a month to do it. That's the time frame I gave myself, because I told obviously the employer that gave me the job wasn't going to wait forever. So I told him, I was like, well, you give me a month and I can probably be there. And he said, okay. And so within a month, I sold what I could of my things and then just kind of gave the rest away, packed what I could in my car. And then over the course of 3 days, I ended up in Wisconsin. And luckily I had, my friends here, were gracious enough to, scout out an apartment for me and, help me find a place to live without me actually having to fly out and waste all this money for a couple days trip to hopefully find an apartment. So yeah, I mean, it was, honestly, it was one of the easier things I did, the trip itself. But once I got here, then I think it just kind of sparked something to where it dawned on me that I could do things if I put my mind to it. And so, over the course of the next month after I moved here, I quickly discovered that I didn't like the job that I got. And so I ended up leaving that job pretty soon after I got here and went to another job. And during my time at that job, which also wasn't very long, it finally occurred to me that I hate what I do for a living. Like, it doesn't matter. Like at one point I thought that it was about where I lived, that maybe where I lived was causing the issues. Cause I was feeling pretty down for quite a while. And so I thought maybe this whole move will brighten things up. And don't get me wrong, it did. Being around, cause I didn't have many friends in Portland, cause I had sort of turned into a recluse and a hermit. And, so the people that were in my life, didn't see me very often and didn't really know how to deal with it. So they a lot of times took at least like minor offense to it, as far as like, oh, you're just antisocial. You need to get out of the house more. And it's like, when it's people that you don't necessarily even have a lot of common interests with, it's like, you don't really want to hang out with them in the first place. So anyway, I'm not going to get into that too much, but basically when I moved here, I had more like-minded people that I actually wanted to be around and also, wanted me around. So, anyway, so upon realizing that, I know that my line of work had something to do with this, then I started looking into going to school, seeing if, maybe all this work I did to fix the mistakes that I had made years prior would finally prove fruitful for me. So, I looked into it, and, initially I was just looking for the fastest, easiest way to get out of what I'm doing, which is machining. So initially I just jumped right into IT, working with computers, because I've worked with computers all my life. And, you can basically go to a technical college and get a degree in that field within 2 years, or more if you want to, space it out a little bit or whatever. But that's the path that I decided to take. And, basically started that earlier this year. As I said, this is September now. So, I started doing all this planning last winter around that time, and was all ready to go. And then I started my first 2 classes back in January. So then over the summer, or I should say over the course of that semester, I started talking more and more with my instructors and saying, like, how is it that there's not a lot of things for those new college students to have as a resource to figure out how the hell they're supposed to get through this, life as a college student. I mean, because, when I got into it, it's kind of a mess. I mean, you gotta really work hard and dig to figure out exactly what you need to do, because no one's really going to be there to help you. So as I started talking with my instructors about this, they were thinking that, the ideas I was starting to come up with were pretty good, and that maybe I should try and follow through with it. And then they put me in contact with some other students at the school, and we got to talking, kind of got ideas going back and forth. And then I came up with the idea of doing a podcast. And one of the reasons that I suggested a podcast is actually because I have a little bit of experience doing podcasting. Just a few years ago, I was on one of my hobbies is playing video games, as a lot of times that's the case for, males in their 20s and 30s. So yeah, I got into listening to podcasts and eventually joined a podcast for a short time, which was where I first, had my first experience doing podcasts. And then over time, I bought some equipment, and probably two-ish years later, I started my own podcast for a little while. And it was just a little geek podcast. I talked about like games and movies and general nerdy stuff. But after I moved to Wisconsin, the show kind of just dissolved. Like I did like one episode to say, yeah, my move happened, and this is all great and wonderful. And then just kind of stopped doing it after that. So then, like I said, part of the reason the show dissolved is because I started looking into going to school and was thinking, like, man, I don't know if I can really focus on school and try and come up with content, talk about a show about geek stuff. Especially when there are so many geek oriented podcasts out there, it just didn't seem logical for me to really continue pursuing that. So then, I did the school thing. And like I said, I started suggesting like this idea of doing a podcast about college. The thing is that I was originally intending to do this with other people. And I don't know if it's just me, if it's just my personality, but it ended up not really working out, because when you have to rely on other people and unless you're exactly thinking alike as far as what your goals are and, sticking to schedules, things of that nature, it just doesn't end up working out very well. So the show, like, I had gotten as far as making a website. I made a sample episode. It wasn't anything. It was just me basically talking about an intro or whatever. But I had made some progress on getting this show started, because I really wanted to do it. But once it became clear to me that it wasn't going to happen, then I was like, well, what am I going what am I going to do? I really wanted to do a show regarding, the life of a college student. So, it was during this time that a friend of mine ended up getting accepted to a company and was going to move over to Japan to basically do what it was I wanted to do like 10 years ago. And that's kind of when I had that, kind of face palm, like, oh, that moment where I realized, like, why am I going into IT? I mean, don't get me wrong, I like computers, but, it was my dream, like, years ago to go live in Japan. And granted, I mean, as far as like the only goals I had as far as my education were concerned at this point was to get to the associates, but I was looking ahead thinking that maybe I definitely was going to get a bachelor's degree in something. I didn't know what yet. And depending on the field, I might even go farther than that, go for a master's or even maybe a PhD, a doctorate, So, when I was seeing that my friend was doing this, was going to Japan, it occurred to me, like, because one career path I was thinking of was becoming a teacher, teaching at a school like the college I was attending, because that was one of the things I talked with my instructors about after class was, just the teaching methods, what it took to become a teacher there, things of that nature. So again, when I saw my friend was doing this, it just kind of was like, duh, why don't I do that? I mean, I was looking at, a higher degree than just the associate's program I was in, and I wanted to look into teaching. So why not teach something that I know, which is English? I mean, I'm a fluent English speaker, maybe not the most intelligent as far as vocabulary goes or whatever, but I like to consider myself well spoken, at least in a written form anyway. But that's basically where then this podcast originated from, is that now I have a set path, at least to getting to where I want to go. So now this show is going to sort of chronicle that adventure. So, that's sort of the background of what led to me pretty much talking in front of a microphone right now. So like, where am I at now? Well, originally I was in an IT program. I was going to learn, IT networking, and actually, like, right before, like, literally the week that my classes were going to start, because I had already registered for some of my technical courses a few months ago, earlier in the summer. And like, I was all ready to go. I had my book lists and everything. And like, I decided that, because at one point I was thinking that I could just take IT, get into that, get out of what I'm doing now, start working in IT, which would at least be a transition towards something I'd be interested in. But then at literally the last second, I decided, well, if I get into IT, it would still be a struggle, because I mean, everyone and all the research I was doing indicated that I'd have to start back at the bottom, meaning, the decent wage that I make now, I'd have to go back to probably a similar wage to when I started this career. Which, I mean, unfortunately, I can't afford to do that now, because my standard of living has changed so over the last, 7-8 years. So, when I came to that realization, I said, well, maybe I should just stick with, doing what I do for my job, because it's decent pay. And thankfully, my boss is willing to work with me as far as my school schedule is concerned. Even though I'm not doing school for the particular field, he knows that my knowledge and experience are at least worthwhile enough to keep me around while I'm in school towards something else. So thankfully, he's willing to work with my schedule. So my thought process is that I'll just stick with that, and then just try and find the fastest way to get to a bachelor's degree. So what I what I basically did the week that the semester was supposed to start is I completely changed my program. I dropped out of the IT program, and my college, as I'm sure a lot of technical or community colleges provide, is like an accelerated degree. What that basically means is that you can take basically 2 semesters worth of courses in one. So it jams a whole semester's worth of coursework into 8 weeks, because normally a semester is 16 weeks. And this is all done online. It's an online course, so it's configured pretty much to your schedule. The only thing is that because I signed up at the last minute, I actually didn't realize I have to get accepted and blah, blah, blah. So, because I didn't want to waste this semester, I decided to at least knock out a few of those courses on the requirements list. So I'm still taking 4 classes this semester. They're just going to be at the normal pace. However, providing I get accepted and everything, I would be starting this program next spring. And their intention is that it will be over the course of 2 spring and fall semesters, and then 1 summer semester, that you would complete the entire program. And it's a degree in liberal arts, which translates basically to kind of a generic. I don't want to say generic. There's not really an easier way to explain it, but it knocks out a lot of the general studies. So it's essentially just you saying I have an associate's degree, but you can't say I have an associate's in a particular field. So depending on what companies are looking for, a lot of times when it comes to associates, they want something specific. They want a particular skill set or whatever, according to your college. So this program is definitely intended to go towards a bachelor's degree, because all these courses that I'm taking are going to be 200 level, which is what they utilize for college transfers. So, if you want a piece of advice, any course that's 200 level at your community college usually can be transferred towards a bachelor's degree. I wish I had known that last semester, because I took 100 level courses, which only apply towards whatever particular degree you have. So for me, those 100 level courses I took last semester are going to be useless towards this degree that I'm in now, which is, it's my own fault. So I kind of accept that. But this is part of the purpose of this show, is so that I can hopefully explain those things, and maybe someone won't make the same mistakes that I did, when they decide to do their thing. So I don't know what my bachelor's degree is going to be in. I'm leaning towards psychology, and psychology is one of the classes I'm taking this semester. So, I'll basically have an idea if I want to do that as the main subject, or if I want to lean towards something else. I'm not particularly sure. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. In future episodes, I'm not sure what I'll mention as far as like current status. Maybe I'll talk about tests that I'm taking or something. I'm not particularly sure. So you'll have to bear with me as these first few episodes are going, while I find my direction. Most shows don't really hit their stride until around, episode 15 or 20. So, I still got a ways to go before I have everything laid out here. So, at this point, I'm probably getting ready to close out this show. I don't know how long the episodes are going to be, like on a regular basis. I'm looking at my clock right now and it's showing about 30 minutes, but I know that that's probably going to be edited down at least 5 or 10 or so. So these could end up being pretty short shows. I'm not sure. But I figured because, I am fascinated with the Japanese language as well, and I do want to learn it at some point down the road. I'm hoping I can incorporate it into my studies at some point. Right now, I just kind of learn on my own. I speak with a few natives online and read some books and, listen to shows. Obviously, I watch stuff. You know, I like to watch anime and things of that nature, but I'm pretty terrible about reading kanji. I only know a couple that I could actually read. But I figured towards the end of the show, I give like some tips based on what I know and what I'm pretty certain of. Now, this is not to be considered like a language course. Like, don't, whatever you hear from me, definitely make sure to verify it outside, outside of the show. Because I am, obviously not a native speaker of Japanese, and I'm still learning it myself, but I figured this would be a good way for me to keep up with my learning and then hopefully maybe pass some knowledge along. So, what I wanted to, do today was just kind of start with the basics. And what a lot of people don't usually understand about, foreign languages that are not English is that, the vowels in a language are actually pretty easy to get, pretty easy to grasp because they're only said like one way. And that's very true in Japanese. One of the reasons that English is the hardest language to learn is because our vowels and a lot of our words can be said in so many different ways. And, just think about it when you're speaking to someone. Obviously, I'm, talking to the English natives out there, but think about when you're talking to someone and just the different ways that you're saying, words that have vowels in them. And we only have 5 vowels, but those 5 vowels are said in so many different ways. And when you think about, foreign languages, especially Japanese, it's very straightforward. So the vowels are the same as in English. Their order is a little different because they obviously don't follow our 26 character alphabet. So, for us in English, it would be A-E-I-O-U, but in Japanese, it actually goes, A-E-U-A-O. That's like, if you ever look up a kana chart, and kana is there's 2 forms of kana. There is, hiragana, which is like the native, Japanese writing. And that, I suppose I should add, that's not like that's the non-kanji writing. So that's usually where you'll find a lot of the, fill in the gap type lettering when you're mixing it with kanji. And then there's, katakana, which is which covers like a lot of the foreign words. So, like the word America. America is not a natural word in Japanese, so they would say America. It essentially sounds the same. And when you start to learn Japanese, it becomes pretty easy fairly quickly to detect the words that are not native to Japanese. So because they sound very similar to their English counterpart, or even other language. So like if there's a German word that is not native to Japanese, they will pronounce it as such. It'll basically be like pronouncing a German word in a Japanese dialect. That's kind of the best way to explain it. But with the vowel pronunciation, it's simply like for us it'd be the letter A. And, think of the different ways you can say the letter A, or pronounce it, I should say. But in Japanese, it's just simply ah. That's it. Ah, as in like father. And then you have, E, not the letter E. It's actually written as the letter I. This is where it can get confusing. And I mean, because it's an audio show, it's sort of hard to explain, without having some kind of visual. So all you'd have to do is just look up like Japanese vowels, Google that or something, or look up a kana chart, and it'll usually show romanized letters next to their kana counterparts. So there's the letter A, the letter I, which is E. It's pronounced E. It's always pronounced E. And then there's it's written as the letter E, but it's always pronounced A. like it's like when you pronounce the word egg, that's how you pronounce E, the letter E. I've been studying this for a long time, and even now I'm starting to confuse myself. So, yeah, it's definitely better to look at a chart, while you're listening to this part. Oh, you know what? I actually got the order mixed up. It's A, I, U, E, O. So it's actually the letter A, the letter I, the letter U, the letter E, and then the letter O. That's the format for the vowels. And so literally it's just A, I, U, E, O. And then for there, they have, they'll put consonants in front of them to get their various, to basically get all the sounds from the Japanese language. I don't know them off the top of my head. But if you're looking at a kana chart, you can see, the various consonants that they put in there. They don't put each one in there. But well, I suppose they put probably close to each one in there. But the thing is that the general chart that you're looking at is like the regular. I don't know the proper term for it. This is probably something I should have looked up before I did the show. But they modify certain kana to give it a different sound. So, I'll give you an example. Like, the next set of characters would be with a K sound. So it would be, you have A, I, U, E, O, then it's Ka, Ki, Ku, Ke, Ko. But the thing is that you can take those same symbols and then you put it looks like, quotation marks, in the top right corner. And that changes the property of that kana and actually gives it a G sound. But the G's are always pronounced with a G. You never pronounce it J. It's always a G, like the word good. So then when you put those quotation marks in front of a K sounding kana, it then turns it into ga, gi, gu, ge, go. And that's just kind of the way it works. Now there is another symbol that changes the properties as well. So some kana have two modifications. One is the quotation marks, and then the other is like this little tiny dot. It looks a lot like when you see the degrees symbol when you're reading temperature, and that can modify the same kana but give it different properties. So this is just how they read their kana. I'm not going to go over every single one because that might be a pain, but it can always be something that if you want to know something specific, you're welcome to write in or tweet or, get a hold of the show any way you choose. I guess I'll lead right into that. There are ways to get a hold of the show. I have ideas for what I'm going to do for the show. But there's nothing to say that this show can't be driven by, its audience members. So, if there's something in particular you want me to talk about, feel free to let me know. I haven't set up the email address, just yet for the main contact. So I'm not going to bother with that just yet, but I did make a Twitter account and it is simply, at The Road to Japan. No weird spelling, no underscores, no none of that. It's just like it sounds, The Road to Japan. There is a Facebook page. I don't know the address for that just yet. But you can probably just run a search in Facebook for The Road to Japan and it'll probably pop up. You'll see the icon for this show. And then of course there's the website, which is simply theroadtojapan.com. That's pretty much it. I think I'm just gonna kind of leave it with that. I apologize for how this sounds. I seem to be constantly running out of breath, and I think it's just been a while since I've had to do a podcast. Thank you for struggling with me through this first episode. I don't know what the schedule is going to be for these shows. It's essentially going to be when I have time to do them. I can't say, I don't want to commit myself to saying, oh, this will be a weekly show or a bi-weekly show. It's pretty much going to be when I have time. It's still early in the semester. Like I said, it's September 1st, and like I just finished my first week. So I'm still in that stage of getting the feel for how the semester is going to play out. Maybe after I do a couple episodes, then I can start to see the pattern and then say like, okay, this will be a blah 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 show. And it'll obviously be driven, you know, if I start getting a lot of feedback, then that'll drive topics, and then maybe that'll also, you know, affect the frequency of how often I do a show. There are possibly other ideas I'm thinking about, you know, maybe, I don't know, videos or posts on the website having to do with particular subjects. It all depends. It depends on, you know, what it is the audience might want and what I am up to and capable of doing. So once again, this has been episode 1 of The Road to Japan. My name is Nico, and I will see you next time.